Hi, today I'm going to do a video that talks about a few important issues, and to demonstrate it, I will show you. I am in my black tank top, which is a new tank top I got recently, and I have some black body paint on each arm. That you can tell it's not pro; it's just for hiking in. So I wanted to use my dressing in black um, to discuss some important issues related to racism and its origins, and also, though, how to go about it in a real love and tolerance way, but not pick things apart in order to promote tolerance, aka political correctness. So, um, now, not everyone knows this. Most pagans do. So, mainly because there was a mass genocide in the Middle Ages committed against them for this reason, which I'll get into later in this video. So, now, contrary to what some pagans insist, I am not completely nothing is dualistic. Complete dualism and seeing the world as completely black and white is, of course, not realistic and not the truth, but neither is seeing everything as mixed and nothing as basically, direct and definite. You do need a mixture of both. For one thing is ABA, which is always chaotic evil. However, the way good and evil are classified so much is the term black and white. Now, there's a lot of issues with that term in that much of the worst acts of racism and genocide throughout history have been caused because of that ideology. Basically, it's associating light colors in white with good and dark colors in black with evil. Now, this has led to the assumption that somebody's skin, if it's light, it means they're good, and if it's dark, it means they're evil. Martin Luther King Jr. said that only in darkness can you see the stars, something like that. Now, I'm sure everybody can see the obviously why that was an important statement and still is for the civil rights movement. So, the slavery of black people in my country, and which also went around throughout the New World, was largely based on this. White Christians, conservative slaveholders, had this idea that they, with their white skin, were blessed by the God of light, and that dark-skinned people from Africa were evil and cursed by the devil because their skin was dark. Now, this also justified their genocide against Native people in the New World because their skin was darker than the white settlers' skin. The Puritans, those lovely fundies who settled on Plymouth Rock in my state of Massachusetts right before committing genocide of the Native Americans. There really is no proof as to whether or not the first Thanksgiving between the Pilgrims and Indians existed at all, because many people believe that was just a racist lie to cover up the Native American genocide. There is some evidence that it could have existed, but if there did exist one peaceful feast between the Pilgrims and the Indians, it was still not a very friendly feast, particularly, at least not internally, because the Puritans, aka the Pilgrims, saw Native Americans as devils disguised as human beings. They felt that the only true humans had the white skin of the white good God, and of course anybody with dark skin was cursed by the Prince of Darkness. This was also used in the Holocaust because the Nazis had this idea that the master Aryan race was blessed by the light God with blonde hair, white skin, and blue eyes, and that all the non-Aryan groups with darker skin, eyes, and hair were inferior, were evil, were cursed by the devil of darkness. And in all of these instances, the black versus white, representing evil versus good, promoted a call for the good white man to murder and destroy the evil dark man. Now, there's another history to this that not everybody is aware of. Now, I mentioned the pagan Holocaust, and the problem with around that history, which it is true, it did happen, but the problem is that so many neo-pagans have this idea that it actually didn't ever happen, and it was perpetrated against people called witches who weren't really pagans. That is basically denying a genocide, but the way Wiccan literature commonly portrays it is not that accurate, mainly the time frame. For one thing, Wiccan literature does not usually classify old European paganism and witchcraft in the exactly accurate ways that it actually was practiced, which probably in my later videos I can give you some more historical info on that. But a lot of Wiccan literature says that for a long time during the Middle Ages, magic was tolerated until the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of the Renaissance when the witch burnings happened. Actually, the burning times happened a lot earlier than that. They happened right at the start of the Middle Ages when Christianity was starting to take over Europe. And in trying to take over and become a massive political and religious power, the Catholic Church set out on the genocide campaign to stamp out paganism, and that's where Christianity created that the whole black being evil, white being good ideology. And another thing that a lot of people don't know is that this black and white morality dualism has not just been perpetuated against humans with dark skin, but against non-humans with dark skin also. Most people are aware of the symbolism of a black cat being a witch is familiar. This came from the burning times, the actual burning times in the Middle Ages in Europe, in which black cats, all cats, but especially black cats, were seen as evil, as creatures of the devil, because once again their skin was dark, and the Christian Church often waged a major genocide campaign against so many human and non-human animals associated with darkness in one way or another. They could be nocturnal because the ancient witches of Europe would gather underneath the full moon at night to worship their gods, and of course they considered any human or non-human being who was nocturnal, such as that, and also bats and owls and crows and ravens and wolves and all cats and all wolves tend to go out at night to be kind of more nocturnal than diurnal. So anyone with coming out at night was seen as an agent of the devil, because night was seen as the devil's playground, whereas daylight was seen as the playground of God by medieval conservative Christians. Now, it is very sad. I've cried my eyes out at all of this, horrific stuff that's happened throughout history. So, I will get into the actual, details of the burning times as they actually happened. I guess some neo-pagans feel that since they actually happened more back in the past than, at the beginning of the Renaissance, end of the Middle Ages, that maybe it doesn't matter that much. That is a very dangerous way to think, in fact, because the fact is, just because it happened so much longer in the fact that it's been such a hard struggle for the neo-pagan, otherkin, furry, those of my kind movements, and tailed ones such as myself, because people who are born with a tail is what was considered a deformity by Christians, but a special link to the animals by pagans, or people who dressed up ceremonially in horns and tails as satyrs, and people, who were accused of as being werewolves, technically ancient otherkin, were persecuted, and all of these creatures were burned, as were wolves, cats, all the animals I mentioned. Now, this sadly does go on today with human and non-human beings. Almost everyone's aware that racism still hasn't ended towards humans. Sadly, it hasn't, ended toward non-humans either. The ASPCA, or something I read, released this disturbing report about some crazy religious fanatics who do terrible things to black cats on Halloween. It's like crazy, conservative, extremists won't just leave, the non-human animals alone. They do that crazy shit to non-white people, do it to non-white animals too. I like to say human animals and non-human animals, because even though I don't like political correctness, I am sensitive to that kind of language, because we are all one. Not all animals are people, and humans are animals. It just feels nicer and more inclusive to me, personally. So what happened is that, and today in animal shelters, black cats and black dogs are often the ones who most commonly get put down, because so many people still have an internal racial prejudice against those animals for their skin color. The old ancient racial prejudice of the witch burnings still kind of is alive today, and that is one reason why it's dangerous and wrong and hateful to deny the fact that the burning times did exist. Even if they happened differently than, Starhawk or Donna Reed said that they did, it is still not okay to walk away or to look away or to deny that it happened. For one thing, even if something like that horrible happens that far into the past, that does not make it any less horrible. The fact is that millions of innocent human and non-human creatures were tortured and burned alive for no reason out of prejudice and bigotry. And so, also because even though it happened way back in the past, the fact is that the burning times did quite, in fact, set up the whole, genocide setup that eventually led to enslavement of black people in the New World and the New World genocide of its indigenous peoples, and eventually the Holocaust. Hitler and the Nazis, borrowed so much from the enslavement of black people and the genocide of indigenous people, who in turn had borrowed way back from, yes, the burning times. So it is just like it is not okay to deny that, Hitler caused the Holocaust, in Europe during World War II. It is equally not okay to deny that the witch burnings and the burning times did exist. So even like if you say it happened that far into the past, which doesn't really matter because it's still a horrible genocide, it would be one thing if it didn't really affect the history of racism and genocide much later in the world, but the fact is it did, and it still does to a great degree today. So it's really sad. I cry my eyes out for a long time over all this crap. So what it is, so I'm kind of using the color black as just to say that black is not evil, white is not good, colors don't do anything. Colors are things you see with your eyes, and that, the evil is when you deliberately hurt somebody for no reason. Good is when you help somebody and when you're nice and caring. That is the sharp, definite, dualistic depiction of distinction between good and evil, not colors. Martin Luther King said it perfectly in his "I Have a Dream" speech. That everyone who has a heart, including myself, we still hope for a day where nobody can be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And that, to me, it's like the most eloquent speech against black and white dualism, which I call, there's a term for that, it's called colorism. It's being prejudiced against colors and using them to promote acts of hatred and bigotry, just because you associate the color of somebody's skin, whether they're human or non-human, with being evil. So, now I'm just going to say, though, so according to my spiritual beliefs, I still don't believe that the way to end hatred and bigotry and to promote a peaceful, loving, tolerant, accepting world, which not just tolerant, accepting, except I think certain groups, if not really groups, but individuals or certain types of people, if they annoy you, or animals for that matter, such as cockroaches, if they annoy you and you don't want them in your house, then you have a right to tolerate them and not commit genocide against them, or in the case of certain disease-causing bugs like cockroaches, kill them out of necessity so you don't get sick. But, you should not needlessly torture, kill, hurt them just because you hate their guts. So, and you should try to see from their side that, a creature, human or non-human, that you may find uncomfortable, it's okay to not really, and this is extremely complicated because I think it's really wrong to, I'm not going to get into all this yet. This discussion is going to be for way more videos. And I'm going to talk more about these issues of prejudice and bigotry, not just towards humans, but toward non-human animals as well, since, because of my country's current political crisis. There will be a lot of time to discuss and work out solutions to these kind of issues. So, for one thing is, in my spirituality, the color black can sometimes represent evil, but it is not itself evil, and it is never okay to judge a human or non-human creature based on the color of their skin. If a human or non-human creature is black, it has nothing to do with how nice or mean they are. That has entirely to do with the content of their character. So, I do, however, believe that certain spirit beings, certain, demons and or evil spirits, some of them are black, and in that case the black sort of symbolizes their evil, although they come in many different colors which can also symbolize their evil. Black in itself is not evil because more than evil, there are a lot of good, very benevolent spirits that I believe in who are black. So, the point I am making is, promote love and acceptance, but the way to promote love and acceptance is not to constantly pick apart stuff for pieces of what you consider bigotry, and then criticize everybody who likes that as being a bigot. For one example is criticizing cartoons, Disney movies for that kind of thing. Uh, I think that is not the way to fight racism and hatred and genocide or anything bad. The way to do that is to not hate anybody, whether they're human or non-human, because their skin is dark. So, and to not always like somebody likewise because their skin is light. So, in regard to this, true acceptance and love versus political correctness, this is something that even the earliest humans had an idea of and were pretty cool about and smart about. For one thing, the very earliest humans knew, had an instinctive fear of the dark, because they knew not to go outside at night because there's the possibility that they could have been the victim of a predator attack. However, since the very first humans were African, it is pretty much, a good bet that they were not afraid of the color of their own skin. So in other words, it don't matter if you're black or white. I'm also a Michael Jackson fan.